You see, many people think faith is force. They believe if they stress enough, if they worry enough, if they try harder, then somehow heaven will respond faster. But hear this truth deeply: anxiety is not acceleration. Fear does not move God. Panic does not open doors. God does not respond to pressure. God responds to trust. And when God says relax, it is not permission to be lazy. It is an invitation to rest in divine certainty. It is heaven saying, stop fighting what I have already secured. You are tense because you think everything depends on you, but peace comes when you realize everything depends on God. There is a difference between effort and strain. God never asked you to strain your soul. God never designed you to live in constant tension. The reason you are exhausted is not because you are doing too much. It is because you are trying to control outcomes that belong to God alone. You are trying to solve tomorrow with today's strength. You are trying to force doors that are already scheduled to open. You are trying to rush a process that God has perfectly timed. And God says, relax. Everything will come to you. Not everything at once, not everything instantly, but everything appointed, everything aligned, everything prepared. Let me speak to your spirit, not your logic. When God says something will come to you, it means you don't have to chase it. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to manipulate for it. What is divinely assigned does not require desperate pursuit. What God has ordained carries its own momentum. Blessings from God are not hunted, they are delivered. Opportunities from God do not hide, they locate you. Favor from God does not run away, it surrounds you. The moment you stop chasing is the moment alignment begins. Some of you are tired because you are running after what is supposed to run toward you. You are knocking on doors that God never told you to touch. You are fighting battles God never assigned to you. And every unnecessary fight drains your oil. Every unauthorized struggle steals your peace. God says, relax. Because when you relax, you release control. And when you release control, you make room for God's power to operate without interference. Understand this clearly. Rest is not inactivity. It is trust in action. When God tells you to relax, it means stop doubting the process. Stop questioning the promise. Stop measuring yourself against others. Stop replaying the past. Stop predicting failure. God is not intimidated by your timeline. God is not pressured by your age. God is not limited by your resources. God is not threatened by delays. What feels late to you is precise to God. What feels slow to you is intentional to God. What feels silent to you is preparation. There are seasons where God allows silence not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening beneath the surface. Seeds grow in darkness, foundations are laid underground. Muscles strengthen under resistance. And faith matures when you don't see immediate results. God says relax because you keep digging up what He planted just to check if it's growing. And every time you dig it up, you delay the harvest. Trust requires stillness. Faith requires patience. Power requires surrender. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not disqualified. You are not running out of time. You are right where God can shape you without distractions. God does not rush masterpieces. God does not panic over details. God does not improvise your future. Everything that will come to you has already been accounted for. Your provision, your protection, your elevation, your connections, your healing, your breakthrough. God is not trying to figure it out. God already finished the plan before you even became aware of the problem. The reason God tells you to relax is because worry creates resistance. Fear blocks clarity. Anxiety distorts perception. When your spirit is tense, you misinterpret signals. You rush decisions. You miss instructions. You react instead of respond. Peace is not just comfort, it is accuracy. When you are calm, you hear God clearly. When you are still, you discern direction. When you are at rest, you move in alignment. God does not shout over chaos. God speaks in stillness. Some of you are praying for answers, but God is asking you to slow down so you can hear them. You are asking God to move, but God is asking you to trust. You are asking God to fix things, but God is saying, I already did. Now stop interfering. Faith is not proved by how much you do. Faith is revealed by how much you can rest while God works. Let me tell you something that will challenge your mindset. God is not impressed by your stress. God is not moved by your sleepless nights. God is not glorified by your burnout. Peace honors God more than panic ever will. Rest is a declaration that God is sovereign. Calmness is a confession that God is in control. When you relax, you are not giving up. You are handing over authority to the one who never loses. Everything will come to you because God is a God of order. What is meant for you is on schedule. What is not meant for you will fall away no matter how hard you chase it. You don't have to compete. You don't have to compare. You don't have to prove anything. God does not bless competition. God blesses obedience and trust. And trust looks like calm confidence, not frantic effort. You have been conditioned to believe that struggle equals progress, that pain equals purpose, that exhaustion equals commitment. But that is not divine truth. God can advance you while you sleep. God can arrange things while you rest. God can open doors while you are still. The universe does not move by your effort. It moves by God's command. And God says, relax. Some of you are holding your breath spiritually. You are waiting for something to go wrong because life has trained you to expect disappointment. But hear this clearly. Anticipation of disaster is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as caution. God did not bring you this far to abandon you now. God did not preserve you through storms just to let you sink at the shore. God did not protect you in chaos to fail you in calm. The same power that sustained you in hardship will elevate you in peace. When God says everything will come to you, it includes things you stopped hoping for. It includes things you thought you missed. It includes things you felt unworthy of. God restores not only what was lost, but what was delayed, denied, and dismissed. God is not limited to one path. If one door closed, another is already opening. If one season ended, another is already beginning. Nothing is wasted in God's hands. Not your tears, not your waiting, not your setbacks. You are not waiting on God. God is aligning things for you, and alignment takes time because it involves people, places, timing, and preparation. God is not just blessing you. God is protecting you from receiving things before you are ready. Premature blessings can destroy unprepared hearts. God delays not to punish, but to preserve. God withholds not to deny, but to refine. Relax. Because what is coming requires peace to sustain it. What is coming requires wisdom to manage it. What is coming requires humility to steward it. God is shaping your character to match your destiny. And that shaping often feels like waiting, silence, and restraint. But restraint is not rejection. It is refinement. You must understand this deeply. God does not forget promises. God does not misplace destinies. God does not cancel assignments because of temporary setbacks. Your past mistakes did not erase your future. Your failures did not disqualify you. God knew every weakness before calling you. God knew every flaw before choosing you. And still, God said, you are mine. When you relax, you step out of survival mode and into faith mode. Survival mode reacts. Faith mode, rests. Survival mode hoards. Faith mode trusts. Survival mode fears loss. Faith mode expects provision. God is not asking you to ignore reality. God is asking you to see beyond it. Reality changes under divine authority. Some of you are trying to fix what God is already healing. You are reopening wounds God already closed. You are revisiting seasons God already ended. Relax. You don't need to relive what God already redeemed. Move forward in peace. The past has no authority over your future unless you give it permission. Everything will come to you because God is intentional. The right people will find you. The right opportunities will locate you. The right doors will open at the right time. And the wrong things will remove themselves without you forcing them out. When God is leading, separation happens naturally. What does not belong cannot stay. What belongs cannot miss you. You don't need to announce your progress. You don't need to defend your path. You don't need to explain your silence. God is working quietly, but the results will speak loudly. When it arrives, it will be undeniable. When it manifests, it will be clear it was not your effort, but God's favor. Relax your shoulders. Release your grip. Exhale the pressure. God has never dropped a responsibility. God has never failed an assignment. God has never misjudged timing. If it hasn't happened yet, it means it's still being perfected. God does not give unfinished blessings. What comes from God comes whole. You are not created to live in constant urgency. Urgency belongs to fear. Peace belongs to faith. God's pace is steady, intentional, and unstoppable. Nothing can block what God has decreed. Opposition cannot cancel it. Delay cannot destroy it. Doubt cannot erase it. Even your own confusion cannot stop it. God's word does not return empty. Everything will come to you, not because life is easy, but because God is faithful. Not because you deserve it, but because God is gracious. Not because you figured it out, but because God already did. Your job is not to stress, it is to stay aligned. Your role is not to force, it is to trust. Your assignment is not to worry, it is to believe. Let me take you deeper, because relaxing in God is not passive, it is prophetic. When you relax, you are making a statement to the unseen realm that fear no longer governs your decisions. You are declaring that uncertainty does not own your emotions. You are announcing that God's authority is greater than your circumstances. Relaxation in God is warfare. It confuses the systems that expected you to panic. It silences the voices that predicted your collapse. It exposes the lie that you must break yourself to succeed. When God says, relax, He is not asking you to withdraw. He is inviting you to rise above pressure. There are people listening who have been living under constant tension, as if one wrong move will destroy everything. But hear this truth. What God has prepared for you is not fragile. It will not shatter because of one mistake. It will not disappear because of one delay. It will not collapse because of one weak moment. God's plans are resilient. God's purposes are durable. They withstand storms, opposition, criticism, and even your own doubts. That is why God says, relax. You are guarding something that is already protected. Some of you have been trained by hardship to expect loss. Eve, right time something good appears, you brace yourself for disappointment. But God is rewriting that pattern. God is teaching your spirit a new language, the language of expectation without fear, blessing without anxiety, progress without panic. God does not want you to survive success. God wants you to enjoy it. That is why peace must come before provision. Calm must come before increase. If God gives you more while your soul is restless, the blessing will feel like a burden. So God heals your inner world before expanding your outer one. You must understand that trust is not proven when things are easy. Trust is revealed when nothing seems to be moving, yet your heart remains steady. Anyone can praise when doors are opening, but faith rests when doors are silent. God is watching how you carry yourself in waiting seasons, not to judge you, but to prepare you. Because what is coming requires emotional maturity. What is coming requires spiritual stability. What is coming requires a heart that does not collapse under pressure. God says, relax, because you've been trying to read signs instead of listening for direction. You analyze every delay, every silence, every closed door, trying to decode meaning. But God is not a puzzle. You don't need to overthink Him. Obedience is simple. Trust is simple. Faith is simple. It is fear that complicates things. When you relax, clarity returns. You stop interpreting everything as a threat and start seeing alignment. There are moments when God intentionally removes urgency from your life to show you that nothing is slipping away. You are not losing momentum. You are not falling behind. You are being repositioned. God sometimes slows the so your soul can catch up with your destiny. Because arriving exhausted is not victory. Reaching the destination empty is not success. God wants you whole when you arrive. Some of you are worried because others seem to be advancing faster. But speed is not superiority. Visibility is not value. God does not measure success the way humans do. God values depth over display, foundation over applause, character over speed. What God is building in you will outlast trends, seasons, and opinions. That is why your process looks different. And that is why your timing feels unusual. God is not copying anyone else's blueprint. He is executing a custom design. Relax, because comparison is draining your joy. Comparison blinds you to what God is doing uniquely in your life. When you compare, you rush. When you rush, you misalign. When you misalign, you struggle unnecessarily. God never told you to race anyone. God told you to trust Him, and trust creates peace even when you don't understand the route. Let me speak to those who feel stuck. Stillness is not stagnation when God is involved. Waiting is not wasting when God is leading. Some of the greatest shifts happen when nothing seems to be happening. God works in layers. What you see is only the surface. Beneath it, God is rearranging conversations, shifting hearts, redirecting paths, and closing gaps you didn't even know existed. You don't need to monitor the process. God has full oversight. God says everything will come to you because He is a God who attracts, not just sends. When your heart is aligned, what belongs to you is drawn toward you. Favor is attracted to humility. Opportunity is attracted to preparedness. Peace, attract. Clarity. When you relax, you stop repelling blessings with fear. Fear pushes away what faith pulls in. Some of you have been asking God, what should I do next? And God is saying, remain faithful where you are. Stillness does not mean inactivity. It means consistency without anxiety. Keep doing what God already told you to do without adding pressure. Keep showing up without forcing outcomes. Keep trusting without demanding timelines. God is not asking for extra effort. God is asking for steady faith. You must release the belief that rest means falling behind. In God's system, rest is how you stay aligned. Rest recalibrates your spirit. It sharpens your discernment. It restores your strength. God designed rest not as a luxury, but as a necessity. When you ignore rest, you operate from depletion. When you operate from depletion, you make decisions out of fear. But when you rest, you move with wisdom. There is a sacred confidence that comes when you know God is handling what you cannot. That confidence does not shout. It stands firm. It does not rush. It remains anchored. It does not panic. It waits with expectation. That is the posture God is inviting you into, not frantic belief, but settled trust. Some of you are carrying guilt because you think relaxing means you don't care enough. That is a lie. Peace is not apathy. Calm is not indifference. Rest is not laziness. Rest is alignment with divine order. God never intended for you to live in constant mental tension. You were designed to operate from assurance, not anxiety. Everything will come to you because God is consistent. Human systems fluctuate, people change, circumstances shift, but God remains constant. If God said it, it will happen. If God promised it, it will arrive. Not because circumstances cooperate, but because God is faithful beyond circumstances. Even resistance works in your favor when God is in control. Let go of the need to understand every step. Understanding often comes after obedience, not before it. Peace often arrives when you stop demanding explanations. God does not owe you details to be trustworthy. God's track record is enough. Look back and see how many times God carried you when you didn't know how things would work out. That same faithfulness is still active. Relax your expectations of perfection. God works through imperfect people. God moves through flawed vessels. God does not wait for you to have everything together. If that were the case, nothing would ever happen. God's power is revealed not in your control, but in your surrender. Some of you need to hear this clearly. You are allowed to breathe again. You are allowed to enjoy small moments. You are allowed to laugh without guilt. You are allowed to rest without fear. Joy is not irresponsible. It is a sign of trust. Peace is not denial. It is confidence in God's authority. Everything will come to you because God's timing is precise. Early would harm you, late would frustrate you, but right on time will strengthen you. God knows exactly when you can handle what you are asking for. And until then, He prepares you quietly. Stay relaxed, not because life is predictable, but because God is reliable. Stay calm, not because you see the outcome, but because God already does. Stay steady, not because you feel strong, but because God is your strength. When you trust like this, you are not just waiting, you are worshiping with your posture. And as you remain in this posture of trust, things will begin to shift naturally. Conversations will change, opportunities will emerge, clarity will increase, peace will deepen, not because you forced anything, but because you finally allowed God to work without resistance. Relax. God is not behind. God is not confused. God is not struggling. Everything that is meant for you is already moving in your direction, carried by divine intention, guarded by divine power, and released by divine timing. Now hear this with spiritual precision. Relaxation in God is not ignoring responsibility. It is refusing to idolize responsibility. When responsibility becomes heavier than reverence, it turns into bondage. God never asked you to worship outcomes. God never asked you to bow to results. God asked you to walk in obedience and trust His sovereignty. When you relax, you are restoring the proper order. God above plans, God above timelines, God above expectations. And when order is restored, peace flows naturally. Many of you have been trying to predict what God intentionally concealed. You are scanning the horizon, trying to guess how things will unfold, but God does not reveal the future to satisfy curiosity. God reveals it to those who are ready to steward it. That is why peace must come first. A restless heart cannot carry revelation. A fearful mind cannot manage clarity. God quiets you not to withhold information, but to prepare you for it. There is a sacred mystery in trusting God without needing constant reassurance. Faith does not demand daily proof. Faith rests in the character of God. When God says everything will come to you, it is not dependent on favorable conditions. It is not delayed by opposition. It is not threatened by scarcity. God does not borrow resources, God commands them. God does not negotiate with circumstances, He overrules them. When you truly believe this, your soul relaxes. because it understands that nothing has final authority except God. Some of you are afraid that if you stop pushing, everything will stop. But hear this truth: what is driven only by you collapses when you rest, but what is sustained by God continues even when you pause. That is the difference between human effort and divine momentum. Divine momentum does not require exhaustion. It requires alignment. And alignment is born out of trust, not strain. God is teaching you how to live without panic. Panic shortens vision. Panic narrows focus. Panic makes you reactive instead of responsive. But peace expands perception. Peace allows you to see beyond the immediate. Peace positions you to recognize doors before they open. God wants you calm because calm people make accurate decisions. Calm people hear instruction clearly. Calm people don't sabotage tomorrow by overreacting today. Let me speak to those who feel pressure from expectations. Expectations from family, society, culture, even from yourself. You feel like time is judging you. You feel like progress is being measured. But God is not grading you on speed. God is shaping you for sustainability. God is not interested in short-lived success that breaks your soul. God is invested in growth that lasts beyond applause. That is why your journey feels slower. It is deeper. You must understand that God values inner stability more than external achievement. A calm spirit is a greater testimony than a crowded schedule. A peaceful heart honors God more than frantic productivity. When you relax, you are declaring that God is sufficient. And sufficiency is the foundation of gratitude. Gratitude style entities fear because it recognizes that what you already have came from God, and what is coming will come the same way. Some of you have been living as if one missed opportunity will ruin everything. That belief is rooted in scarcity, not faith. God is not limited to one chance. God is not dependent on one connection. God is not restricted to one season. If one path closes, God creates another. If one door shuts, God opens one you didn't even know existed. Scarcity thinking creates anxiety. Trust in God creates peace. Relax, because God is not only guiding your steps, He is guarding your heart. God protects you from things you would have pursued if fear had been in control. God blocks paths that look good but would drain you. God delays blessings that would overwhelm you. What feels like denial is often protection you will thank God for later. There is a profound strength in waiting without complaining. Complaints reveal distrust. Trust reveals patience. Patience reveals maturity. God is cultivating maturity in you, not frustration. When you relax, you allow that maturity to take root. And mature faith does not need constant affirmation. It knows God is faithful even when emotions fluctuate. Some of you are fighting invisible battles in your mind. You replay worst-case scenarios. You imagine loss before it happens. You prepare for disappointment before it arrives. But God is calling you out of that mental warfare. God did not design your imagination to rehearse fear. God designed it to anticipate goodness. When you relax, your imagination is healed. It stops producing anxiety and starts expecting provision. Everything will come to you because God honors trust. Trust is not loud. It is consistent. Trust shows up every day without panic. Trust keeps moving without force. Trust stays grounded when nothing seems to change. And God responds to that kind of faith because it reflects His nature, steady, faithful, unshaken. You don't need to control people. You don't need to manipulate outcomes. You don't need to chase validation. What is meant to stay will stay. What is meant to align will align. God removes unnecessary attachments so your hands are free to receive what truly belongs to you. When you relax, You stop clinging to what God is removing and start welcoming what God is bringing. God is also teaching you discernment through rest. Discernment is not loud suspicion, it is quiet clarity. When you are relaxed, you sense what to accept and what to release. Anxiety clouds discernment. Peace sharpens it. That is why God keeps calling you into stillness, not to slow your life, but to sharpen your vision. Some of you are afraid to rest because rest forces you to confront unresolved emotions. But God heals what you are willing to face calmly. Rest allows truth to surface without overwhelming you, and God is gentle in that process. God does not expose to shame, God reveals to heal. When you relax, healing flows naturally. Everything will come to you because God is intentional about timing. God knows when your heart is ready. God knows when your character is stable. God knows when your perspective is healthy. And when those align, release happens without strain. You will not have to force what God releases. You will simply receive it. Let peace become your default response. Let trust be your foundation. Let calm be your testimony. Not because nothing ever goes wrong, but because God remains sovereign when things do. Relax, not as an escape, but as an act of faith. God is working with precision, patience, and power, and what He has ordained for you is moving closer with every moment you choose trust over fear. So let this truth settle deeply into your spirit and anchor itself in your heart. You are never meant to live under constant pressure. You are never designed to wake up afraid of the future or to fall asleep exhausted by tomorrow. God did not create you to carry the weight of outcomes, only the responsibility of trust. When God says, relax, everything will come to you, He is inviting you into a higher way of living. One where peace is not postponed, joy is not conditional, and faith is not fragile. From this moment forward, choose to live from assurance, not anxiety. Let your calm become your confession. Let your stillness speak louder than your worries ever did. When challenges arise, remain grounded. When answers delay, remain steady. When the path feels unclear, remain confident. Not in your own understanding, but in God's unfailing guidance. The same God who brought you through uncertainty will lead you into clarity. The same God who sustained you in waiting will establish you in fulfillment. Release what you cannot control. Surrender what you cannot fix. Trust what you cannot yet see. God is already ahead of you, arranging details, aligning timing, and orchestrating outcomes with divine wisdom. Nothing that belongs to you will miss you. Nothing meant to bless you will bypass you. Nothing God promised will fail to arrive. You don't need to hurry what God has already secured. Stand firm in peace. Walk forward with confidence. Breathe deeply without fear. Let rest become your strength and trust become your posture. God is faithful. God is intentional, and God is in complete control. Everything will come to you exactly as it should, exactly when it must, carried by divine purpose and sustained by divine power. And as you move forward from here, carry this certainty with you like an unshakable foundation beneath your feet. God is not watching your life with concern. God is governing it with authority. Nothing is slipping through His hands. Nothing is drifting without direction. Every delay has meaning. Every pause has purpose. Every quiet season is shaping strength within you that noise could never produce. When you relax, you are not stepping back. You are stepping into alignment with a power far greater than your effort. Let your heart learn this holy discipline of calm trust. When pressure rises, choose peace. When uncertainty appears, choose confidence. When the future feels distant, choose faith. God is not asking you to predict what is coming. God is asking you to prepare your heart to receive it without fear. A peaceful heart is fertile ground for fulfillment. A rested spirit is ready for increase. Allow your life to testify not of struggle, but of assurance. Let others see that your confidence does not come from perfect conditions, but from unwavering trust in God. Let your quiet strength speak louder than anxious striving ever could. There is a dignity in trusting God without explanation, a power in waiting without resentment, and a victory in resting while heaven works. So remain steady, stay grounded, walk gently but firmly into each new day. God is faithful beyond measure, precise beyond human understanding, and constant beyond circumstance. What has been promised is already in motion. What has been prepared is already secured. What is meant for you is already on its way. Relax, because God has never failed, and God is not about to start now.